Minto Centennial Arena along with Dave Gibbs, preparing for tonight's 5th game of the Provincial High School AAA Hockey Finals. A story in the making. The Minto High School Tigers, a Class A school, and the Matthew Martin Matadors. Dave Gibbs, you've had a chance to talk to the two coaches, in particular Minto coach Bob Deep, and they're on the verge of something here that people perhaps haven't realized until this year.
Well, they're on the verge of an impossible dream, maybe, David. Bob Deep and the players made the decision last fall to go for the AAA championship in New Brunswick, and as he indicated, as their season wore on, they realized that they had a good run for it, they had a good chance to win this championship, and here they are in the finals. I never would have believed it in 100 years. There's a school with about 350 students, and they beat the best that the big schools in the province can offer.
So Minto High School's always had good hockey players, but back before 1967, before the Centennial Arena was built, it was outdoor arenas. There was one by the high school, and there was also one by Roy Mills's property that all the kids in Minto used to go and play hockey in those two arenas. Or they'd go to Fredericton and rent the ice at the York Arena, but there was no artificial ice in Minto until 1967. But Minto still always had good hockey teams even back then, and I know that we won the Class M championship in Woodstock in 1973. That it was the first championship, high school championship for Minto, I think in 21 years. But back 21 years in the 50s, they did win a provincial championship. So after we won the Class M, then they changed the classifications. A was small schools, AA was medium-sized schools, and AAA was large schools. So we, of course, we were in the small school category. We had a school population probably less than 400. And we won 2 or 3 successive A championships, so much so that it wasn't a big feat anymore. The guys would win, but I think they outlived their time in A hockey, even though they were an A school, and it was time to challenge them more. So I moved them into the AA category, and for 3 straight years, Tantramar High School, from Sackville, they dominated the province in AA hockey. They had a real good program, and they beat us 3 straight years in the AA final.
Yeah, my experience with the Minto High Tigers was the first year I went into the high school. I was a goaltender, me and Elliot Barton for the AA team, and found out we had the coach of Bob Deep, who I never met before we started playing for him, to realize that he knew a lot about hockey. And most of the guys that played on the team, we played all through minor hockey together, so it was a pretty easy fit for everybody to get into playing together, because we've done it since pretty much right on through the whole minor hockey system. But Bob sure fine-tuned everything to the way it had to be for high school hockey.
For some reason, the first game was played in Sackville, and then the next 2 in Minto. And that's how we evened it up. So we went to Sackville and we lost. I still remember we lost 5-2. I said, here we go again. But on the way back on the bus, every player got up and said something, that they had enough of this. For 3 straight years they lost to Tantramar. Here we are seated ahead of them, and we got to get that out of our system, that we can't beat Tantramar. So they were really up for game 2 in Minto. In fact, by the 6-minute mark, we had a 5-0 lead, and we ended up beating Tantramar 14-2 or something that game. They come back, we beat them 10-3 or something in the next one, and we finally finished them off 7-3 on their home ice. But then I knew, from that moment, they're not going to go AA again. They've conquered that AA, and now it's time to try and make some history. I proposed that they go AAA, but I left the decision with them. And if they decided they want to go AAA, I warned them that they would have to be completely committed. The practices were going to be tougher. Our preparation was going to have to be more thorough, and because we're playing against the best high schools in the province. Fredericton High School in 1980-81 had 130 kids out for tryouts. We had 24, which makes it easy on a coach as far as cutting, but still, the depth that Fredericton High had is something that we had to contend with. And it should be noted at that time that there was no midget AAA hockey at that time, because midget AAA hockey and high school hockey competed for the same players. You couldn't play both. So Fredericton High School had no AAA hockey at that time, or Fredericton didn't. So the team that came out of Fredericton High was the best possible high school team that they could have. And I'm proud to say that we beat them 8 out of 8 times that year. And we swept them in the playoffs. Then we went on to beat Dalhousie, and finally we had to play Matthew Martin. And at that time, you could graduate from high school and come back. So Matthew Martin had a number of players. I can't really tell you how many, but they had a half a dozen or more that went on to the University of Moncton. When they didn't make the hockey team there, they came back and did more coursework at Matthew Martin High School.
This is Dave Morrell back live at the Minto Centennial Arena along with Dave Gibbs. They have just completed the national anthem to start this AAA High School Hockey Final Series game. The Minto High School Tigers will be to our left with goaltender Chris Atio. The Matthew Martin Matadors to our right with goaltender Ron Eagle.
We, being from Minto with 19 or 20 players, we couldn't say that we had the best team in the province or the best players in the province, but but I should say we didn't have the best players in the province. But saying that, 3 out of 4 of the top in the scoring championship in the Big Six Hockey League, Minto had 3 out of the 4 top scorers. So, but in the province, there were a lot of good hockey players. But we had one of the best teams, probably in Canada, teams, and we proved that at the prestigious Sydney tournament. That's where the best high schools in Canada compete in a tournament. We weren't invited. We replaced James M. Hill, who couldn't make it. So we went into that tournament and we ended up in the final. I can still remember there were 5,000 people in the Sydney Forum, and we were playing London, Ontario, the high school in London, Ontario, whose goaltender was Craig Billington, who went on to play in the National Hockey League, and they beat us in sudden death overtime. But we had 5,000 people cheering for us. We were, we were the darlings of the tournament, I guess, because we were a mining town. Cape Breton had lots of mining, and they just took us under their wing, and it was a great atmosphere. It was a great experience for the players too. We took a train to Sydney from Chipman, and that was something for them. Hockey's great. It's not only winning and losing, it's the life skills and the experiences that you can gain by playing hockey. And those guys had a lot of great experiences. They appeared on Wide World of Sports. They were congratulated by Hockey Night in Canada. And, but they never, ever were conceited. They were still humble in victory.
We went to Sydney Academy. We lost in the finals down there at the big tournament, and we're coming back into Chipman, and we couldn't believe it. Pulling into the train, the parking lot was full of cars, and I think it was Mark Quigley told Bob Deep, he said, I'm not going out there until somebody tells them that we didn't win, we actually lost. But when we were driving back to Minto in the in the bus, we looked back, and we were at the end of the heath, and we looked back, and there were still lights coming through the heath. The cars that followed us from Minto followed us home. And through the whole year it was like that. Then we come down to the Matthew Martin finals, one of the last games. Me and Tony Bourgeois and a couple of guys from the high school, we left at lunchtime, went for a drive, and there was people already lined up right out to the road, sitting in lawn chairs with their thermoses of coffee and everything. When I went to the rink that night, I had to park almost down by the Catholic Church and walk my gear up because there was no other place to go.
We're so proud of their town.
Likewise, the town was very proud of them as well.
Yeah, very much so.
Line-up of cars in Main Street to the rink.
Yeah. One game we played in, I believe it was in Chatham, and there was quite a rivalry between James M. Hill and Minto in that final year. And we went up for a Thursday night game, and the rink was packed. But when the guys went out for the warm-up, they saw a coal miner hung in effigy from the rafters. And I don't know who did it, but boy, they did an excellent job. They had the helmet and the light, and they did a good job, I thought. But our players were really angry at that.
Hit a nerve.
They were really angry that they would do that. And I said, well, just a minute. That's our 7th player on the ice, that coal miner hanging there. And I said, every time we score tonight, I want the players on the ice to go and salute that coal miner. Raise your sticks to him. We scored 10 that night. They couldn't wait to score.
They hung a effigy of the coal miner in the corner of the rink, which was probably their biggest mistake they ever made, because that just set everybody into a tizzy. There was no worry about being up for that game. So
Instant motivation.
instant, oh yeah. The old saying, you don't poke the bear.
Nope.
Well, that seems to be what it was that year. So
They drove to the net. They wanted to score to salute that coal miner. That's what it was all about. That's something that other teams didn't have, in their gut. So, as I said, we never had the best player. We had awful good players, but other teams had real good players, but they did not have the team that we did, because every player that jumped over those boards in their shift would give it everything they had. And if they didn't, then they were letting down the team.
But that's one thing that Mr. Deep and the rest of the guys were good about, was you were never scared to take that next step, because somebody had your back. Everybody had your back, actually. So yeah, there was no fear or anything like that. It was just onward and upward. It was beautiful.
You guys were a well-oiled machine.
We were. Everybody knew their job. Everybody did their job. You could depend on the person doing their job so that you could do yours. And that's how we worked, yeah.
Everything was the team. We used 4 lines. I can't say that there were game situations where you perhaps had to drop down to 2 lines late in the game, but for the most part, we used 4 lines, and they gave it all they had. Every player on that team contributed to our success, and that meant a lot to them. They all have a memory. They were all a part of making history, which they did.
Would have thought back last fall, David, is the unbelievable. You wonder if it would ever happen again. Now that one team has done this, they've accomplished something that no team has ever accomplished in the history of high school hockey in this province, and they did it in great fashion, totally dominating the game right from the opening face-off, even though they fell behind 2-0, and then they just took it away from the Matadors, and they wanted it. They showed it out there with a lot of heart, a lot of guts, a lot of determination, and they deserve all the good comments that anybody would want to give them, because they've done a great job. Well, certainly our thanks to the Minto High School Tigers and the Matthew Martin Matadors for an entertaining hockey series, and our thanks to the Minto Tigers and the fans for quite a finish to a AAA championship saga that sees the Tigers take this series 4-1 with a 9-3 final game victory, their first ever AAA championship to go along with the AA and the Class A. CFN heading back to normal in the village of Minto today after last night's celebrations that followed the Minto High Tigers' history-making victory in the high school AAA hockey finals against the Matthew Martin Matadors. The Tigers overcame an early 2-0 deficit. They went on to beat the Matadors 9-3 before a capacity crowd at the Minto Arena, giving the Minto Skaters a series win in 5 games.
It's the first time one school has won the Class A, AA, and AAA hockey titles, and the AAA came on the first attempt at that level. Mark Welton, the key to the Minto attack all year, is currently sifting through the offers from Junior A and college teams in Canada and the United States. But he says he's taking his time.
Well, for me, I don't really know, to tell the truth. I'm just leaving the offers up to my coach. He's the counselor too at the school, Mr. Deep, and I think he'll decide right for me. He decided right all year.
And for Coach Bob Deep, it was the end of an illustrious 11-year coaching career with the Tigers. He coached them in his time at Minto High to all 3 titles.
And it is an excellent way to retire. I've enjoyed all 11 years of it, and perhaps just from the way these guys play, you can see why I've enjoyed it. They give 100% all the time. They're a pleasure to coach, and I'm very proud of them.
The Minto High Tigers, a team made up of students from a school population of less than 400. And those Tigers are just that. They're Tigers. They're king of the hill, number 1, numero uno, whatever handle you want to put on it. Last night, the Tigers capped a dream come true by winning the AAA high school hockey title. For Coach Bob Deep, in an illustrious 11-year career with the Tigers, it means an A title, a AA title, and now a AAA championship. It's an interesting story for sure. Something movies are made of. The little village team knocks off the big guy to take all the marbles. But the story took a lot of work in the writing. Last fall, with the AA crown in their belts, the Tigers met with Coach Deep and made the decision to get involved with the bigger schools full-time and went AAA. Deep told his kids, hey, this is going to be just plain hard work. And hard work it was. But as the season wore on, one began to realize these Tigers are for real. They breezed to the league title, through the zone playoffs, and in a series closer than it seems, with 3 overtime games, took the highly touted Matthew Martin Matadors of Dieppe in 5 games in the best of 7, including a convincing 9-3 win at home last night. As our CFNB broadcast began, it was evident things would end with a big bang last night if the title came to the Tigers. And it did. And it did end with a big bang. I doubt if some have stopped celebrating yet. Coach Deep had a club that coaches only dream of, a team he might never see the likes of again, even if he decided not to retire and coach 10 more years. The Tigers had the mixture of everything. They were hard workers, dedicated team men, and they did not have the prima donnas many teams suffer with. It was a family that stayed together and played together, and that's why I say it may never happen again. That kind of unique mix in sports is seldom seen. Bob Deep really has no extensive hockey background to draw from, but he has the obvious ingredient to make his team winners: dedication, talent, and the ability to inspire and encourage his team.